in listen-only mode.
All right. Hey everyone, thanks for joining us today. We're talking about everyone's favorite topic, PPC attribution, and we're going to learn about burying the last click and moving on. And today's webinar is going to be hosted by Portent and Hanapin Marketing. So the presenters are myself, I'm Cassie O'Median. I'm a Senior Digital Specialist at Hanapin Marketing. You can follow me on Twitter at Cass_O'Median. And I also have with me Michael. So I don't know, Michael, you want to give yourself a little introduction here?
Sure. I'm Michael Wiegand, Analytics Architect at Portent, Inc., based in Seattle. You can follow me on Twitter at mwiegand. Just fair warning, I talk mostly about whiskey and music and all things not marketing. I think maybe 5% of my Twitter content is marketing. So you've been warned.
Awesome. That sounds like my kind of following. All right. So during the webinar today, you can join the conversation by including the hashtag ThinkPPC in your Twitter tweets, or you can use the webinar question box to send us questions throughout the presentation. So we're going to start with just a quick poll question, just to kind of gauge everyone's kind of level of experience. This helps us have a better understanding of kind of what are some of the content that we're going over, where we should focus more of our efforts. So if you get a chance, if you could just fill out the poll question there. I know myself, I fall in category D, the 5+ years, which makes me kind of a grandma of PPC. I don't know, what about you, Michael? Where do you fall in the rankings here?
I started at Portent and PPC in 2007, so yeah, it's been a solid 7 years now.
Wow. We have the grandma and grandpas of PPC here doing the presentation today, so we'll just give you a couple more minutes to fill that out. When did Portent start, Michael?
So a long time ago, actually, 1995 is when my boss Ian founded the company, and at the beginning he was just doing web design before any of the major search engines were a big deal. And then as they came into kind of popularity and Google started getting a foothold and things like that, search became more and more important to marketing on the web.
Cool. That's good to know. So it looks like just seeing in the chat box here some of our range of people here. It looks like we've got a good mix of people between 3 to 5 year experience and 1 to 3 year experience there. So can't really see the poll questions there, so we'll have Michael, you'll have to chime in if some of the other poll questions I can't see, but it looks like majority of them are falling in between the sections B and C there. So cool. I think the content that we have we'll be covering today will definitely be relatable to everyone in the webinar. All right, so we have poll question 2. Just let me click here. All right, Michael, you want to kick this one off?
Sure. So how do you manage your account or accounts if you have multiple? You've got a couple different options there. You can you either manage it yourself, you're part of a team that manages accounts, or you outsource your PPC account management, or maybe you're kind of in flux right now and you're rethinking how your account would be managed. So if you can provide us that feedback too, and kind of is a big deal with attribution, whether you're doing the analysis or whether you're receiving kind of reports for another team that manages your outside account.
Yeah, I haven't done any of the client side, just the client side. I've kind of spent my PPC career in the agency side of it, so
Yeah.
that's
And it looks like we're in good company here. We've got 54% of the folks so far manage it themselves, and 43% are part of a broader team that manages PPC. So looks like a lot of agency folks joined us today, and/or businesses that are um, working on their own in-house.
Awesome. All right. Well, let's go ahead and kick it off.
All right, so you guys, I got a fair warning here. Our talk today will have a lot of Game of Thrones references. We're not trying to give away any major plot twists or anything like that, but we make no promises. So I started with a meme here. Kind of the next piece. Last click attribution, and what we're kind of getting to the point of here is the last click problem. Last click worked really great in 1995. You handed somebody your business card, and they went directly to your site. And a direct conversion was truly direct. It was really easy to measure. And just FYI, that's our good friend Sean Bean in his pre-Ned Stark days, aside Pierce Brosnan in the 1995 classic GoldenEye.
That's crazy. I would never knew that he was in GoldenEye. That's awesome.
I played a lot of GoldenEye, the video game, too. That was an addictive game. But in 2015, next year, last click attribution is just going to be about as dead as Ned Stark. Today, the scenario of somebody coming directly to your website just literally does not happen. There are many, many sources involved and other channels involved, and there's cross-channel and there's multi-device and things like that. And we'll get into the nuances of that problem. But still, we kind of insist on running all of our reports on last click attribution, having it as the default attribution model in our advertising and analytics platforms, which is kind of a broader problem that Google has and some of the other platforms. So I'll shake my fist at them. And then also, we make a lot of our marketing decisions on it still. And the fact is, last click is really just all but irrelevant in determining what influenced a consumer's purchasing decision. So we'll kind of walk through that at greater length. But obviously, you'll need some proof, because when you tell your boss that last click is dead and that we need to switch to another attribution model, they're going to ask for proof. And where you find that is in the path length report in Google Analytics. So Google is constantly tweaking their navigation on the left-hand side of analytics. So I like to use the search, and so just find it by typing path length in there. And you'll get a report that looks a little bit like this. And what you're reading here is really that any path length that is over 1 or is greater than 1 is a scenario where it took somebody at least 2 visits to your site to convert. And for this retailer in the example I've shown, literally 50% of their conversions happened after 2 or more interactions on the site. That's a lot of money and a lot of conversions that you're not getting the full picture on if you're using last click attribution. And so to really truly delve into how these paths look and what your average consumer looks like when they touch 2 or more channels or sources to get to a conversion, you want to key in on the top conversion paths report and delve into that in GA. And you'll get a report that looks like this. You'll find that very, very few of them that take more than 2 touches to get to a conversion involve only 1 channel. You'll get a mix of organic referring to paid search starting a cycle that ends in a direct conversion. Your social network, people finding you on a social piece of content and then coming back through a referral and then coming back direct. And your email campaign kind of bringing up the initial work that was started by paid search. So you've got this kind of symbiotic landscape where a bunch of channels are working together to create conversions. And again, last click is just not very good at telling that story. Recently, too, Google did a study that shows that you're probably missing mobile too if you're doing last click attribution. So unless you have user ID on your Google Analytics account enabled, you're probably not even factoring in multi-device paths. According to the recent study that Google did, 90% of consumers move between devices to complete a task. And that's just staggering when you think about that in a last click perspective. You're not getting any of that if you're looking at it for purely that attribution model.
Yeah, Google will love to show that too about the mobile.
Yeah, they obsess over mobile and for good reason. Um, so what does this all mean? Last click attribution can't really possibly give credit to the channels that truly influence consumer decision making earlier on in the funnel. It also means that you're probably giving way, way too much credit to direct. We've always suspected this for going on 10 years now. Um, but quantifying how much direct conversions and direct revenue is being inflated is tricky until now. We have a lot of attribution tools to help us. And really, last click hamstrings your investment in the top of funnel activities like building out the right organic content, using the right social channels, and what we're concerned with today is building the right paid search campaigns. So to get past these problems, you're going to need to pick an attribution model besides last click and measure results against it over time. So we'll get into all of those. Over to you, Cassie.
Ooh, sorry, had myself on mute there. So fortunately, Google Analytics makes choosing an attribution model pretty easy for us. So there is a model comparison tool available in Google Analytics, and as Michael mentioned, just using their search bar there, you can type in model comparison tool, and it'll pull that up there. So basically, the point of the matter is that we already have a lot of these tools right at your disposal. So you just need to maybe take a step back and understand how each of them work before you really decide which model is best for you. So in the next few slides, I'm going to take some time to just kind of go through and explain the various kind of preset models that are available in Google Analytics and in AdWords, and kind of talk through them and explain a little bit about which ones, how they work, which ones may be better suited for certain verticals. And then Michael will go through and talk a little bit more in depth about the custom models and how to actually create those. So first we're going to talk about last click, and as Michael mentioned, there's a ton of Games of Thrones references throughout this presentation. I'm kind of a diehard fan. I know Michael is too, so yeah, we'll try not to do too many spoilers, but there's going to be quite a few references to it. And for me, I felt it was easier to kind of pick each model and break it down in reference to a character that kind of reminded me of it. So as far as last click goes, we're basically saying last click's dead. It's time to move on, bury it. Let's move forward. So I like to think of the last click attribution here as the Red Wedding from Games of Thrones. And as Michael already started to explain a little bit, the problems with last click and why they're dead is that there's it's giving 100% of the credit to the last click in the funnel. So as you can see here in this example, 100% of the credit is going to direct, whereas we see that paid search was influencing this purchase, referrals were influencing this purchase, organic at some was influencing this purchase as well, and none of them are getting any credit for it. So the problem with this, like I said, there's not enough, we don't have enough accurate information to make decision making from it. And it's just giving way too much credit to last click in this example, and it really kind of hamstrings your investment in the top of the funnel. So if you were to you're making your decisions based off last click, you could really be cutting off your nose spite of your face. You could be, if you were to pull back on paid search or display or some of the other channels, thinking that they weren't really driving these conversions, you could see all of your direct traffic fall off. So it's just really important to understand that we should be starting to look at our accounts through these other attribution models and making sure that we're giving credit to these other channels that are influencing that purchase or conversion. So let's look at first click. So first click, I don't know if first click, in my opinion, is any better. So I mean, the first click and the last click are important pieces, but I personally prefer first click about as much as Sansa prefers Joffrey in this one,
Not at all.
which is not very much, as you can tell if you're a Game of Thrones fan. Um, so the problem with first click is that, again, there's just not enough information to make decisions off of it. You're now giving 100% of the credit to paid search. And whereas I'm a little partial to paid search because that's what I do, I know that in this transition that there's other pieces that are involved in it that are helping the user actually make this purchase. So and by doing this, you're not seeing what it actually helped them convert. If your goal is to maybe just get someone to click on something, then that's a great model, I guess, to use. But if you want to really fully understand what are the other influencers throughout the purchasing cycle, first click is not the model to look at. So, so let's see, moving on here. All right, so the next one we're going to talk about is linear attribution model. Again, these are preset models through AdWords and analytics. And linear model is getting better. At least we are, splitting out the attribution here. I like to think of linear as Daenerys from Games of Thrones, whereas everyone is equal. No more slaves, for the freer of the slaves. And with this piece, I think I had heard reference to it at some point too. They like to think of the linear model as like the participation award. So, like the kids in the soccer game when, that's sitting there picking dandelions on the sidelines where everybody else is hustling and scoring goals, they all get a participation award. And so, it's no one's going to really strive and succeed if everyone just gets, credit for participating. We all know that there's, the people that are really in there, the channels that are really driving, scoring the goals and driving the conversions. And I haven't played soccer since I was like 8, so I don't even know if if the soccer positions have changed since then. But anyways, moving on to looking at a little bit more about linear here. As you can see in the linear model, again, it's giving equal credit to each channel throughout the funnel. So again, it's a start. At least you're giving credit to everything in the funnel. Like I said, it's kind of the everyone wins approach. But as we know that there's, the problem with it is it's almost giving too much credit to probably some of these middle funnels, whereas the probably when the first click that gets them to actually click on the ad is, important, then these other channels that build up to the actual conversion should be getting probably more credit too. All right, so moving on to the next model, time decay. So I kind of like to think of time decay like Littlefinger or Lord Baelish. Just kind of, he starts in low and he's always kind of working to, work his way up the ladder there. So kind of like time decay. And so the benefits of time decay. As you can see in this particular sale, it would say, so paid search would get 10% of the credit for the conversion, referral would get 20%, organic 30, direct 40%. So as you get closer to the time of purchase, you get a little bit more credit. Is given to the channel in that method. And so this model works. I've seen this model work well with lead gen clients or clients that do have heavy research, within their conversion cycle. And I know Michael's going to talk a little bit more about this further on in the presentation.
Sure.
Cool. All right, and so the next model that we have is position-based, and this is my personal, I would say, favorite of the just setup attribution models that analytics and AdWords offers. And so like I said, because it's my favorite, I like to think of it like Tyrion because I think Tyrion is one of my favorite in Games of Thrones, and more or less because he's starts off pretty big in the beginning and then lays lows for a little bit and then at the end just wows us with an awesome finale. So cool. So looking at position-based models, as you can see here, so you're giving 40. So this is a standard model that that AdWords and Analytics offers, and it would give 40% of the credit to the first click, which would be paid search. You'd get 10% for referral, 10% for organic, and then another 40% for direct traffic there. I've seen this model work well for some e-commerce clients, and then I feel like it kind of spreads it out a little bit more. It weights it a little bit more as far as where the clicks are within that purchase cycle. So you have a lot more data to be able to make accurate decisions on your optimizations at this point. And I know, again, I think Michael will talk a little bit more in depth about you know, kind of more the position-based models and e-commerce and stuff.
Absolutely. So the canned models are really great, and they serve a purpose, and they get you a starting point to work from. But you can actually leverage a lot of these tools to build your own custom models. And I like to refer to the custom models as a bit like Lord Varys' spider in Game of Thrones. He's mysterious. You're not sure who he's really working for throughout the whole show, but ultimately he's saying he does everything for the good of the realm. And custom models, really, when you build them right, they do everything for the good of your business. They're completely tailored to your customer's buying cycle.
Yeah, it's a spot on, I think, comparison as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah. So you can choose the weighting too in each position when you first define your custom model. So you pick one of the baseline models that Cassie talked about as your starting point, and then you can tweak the details about the conversion credit from within that model. So you choose the weighting each position in your typical funnel gets, and then you kind of assign credit based on you know, each of the different interaction values. So as long as they equal up to 100% of the conversion credit, you can distribute that however you like. Personally, I don't know if I'd give 40% to the middle of the interaction funnels, but we'll kind of work through that. The next piece that you can control when you create a custom model is the look back window. By default, Google Analytics look back window is 30 days. That might not be long enough if you sell really high ticket items in e-commerce, or you have a really expensive service that you're doing lead gen for. So you can draw it back to a maximum of 90 days. And that determines, you know, basically when the first click occurs and the conversion takes place. It can happen anytime within that 90-day window.
Yeah, and using the, if you're not really sure either, you can look at your time lag report, and that will kind of give you an idea if you have a lot of conversions coming in post the 30-day mark there.
Yep. The next piece is you can make engagement a weighting factor, and that's a fantastic touch, especially if you're, you know, in the example earlier when Cassie was talking about the linear model. Not all clicks are created equal, and to really find out, you know, really how true that is, you have to apply a weighting based on engagement. So even if you're giving 20% of the credit to every click along the click stream, you want to distribute your credit proportionally based on either your time on site or your page depth in the engagement for each channel. So, you know, the middle click that you assign 40% of that conversion credit to in the earlier step, that might be, you know, a 30-second comparison shopping visit. So you don't really want to assign it too much weight unless you have the engagement to really mitigate some of the risk in choosing that weighting. We'll get to you know, assigning the weights too. The next piece in the custom model, though, is virtually in Google Analytics, you can customize your rules around any dimension. In the example here, I've actually made sure that visits that included my brand in the keyword search only get half of the credit as my other interactions. If somebody's searching for my brand, they already know about me in some other way, either offline or previous research online. So If I want to give them a little less credit in the click stream, I can define that here. And then if those options of configuration aren't enough for you, there's also a slew of models that people have created in the Google Analytics solution gallery that you can literally just one-click import into your account. And I'm giving a hat tip here to Avinash Kaushik. He's a big hero of mine in the analytics space. He built a model that's really popular in the solutions gallery. So I highly recommend importing and trying out his model.
Yeah, I've heard about that one too. I've heard it's really good.
Absolutely. So after all of that, choice kind of becomes the enemy of your happiness there, and that's a bit understandable. So what we're going to do is talk about some starter models that you can employ that are custom for 4 different types of businesses. So if you jump next slide there, we'll see that you've got inexpensive e-commerce businesses where you're selling items and getting an average order value that's under $100. You have expensive e-commerce businesses where you're selling stuff upwards of $100 that requires a little bit more thought. And then you have short cycle lead gen that is less than a 30-day thing. So maybe signing up for a subscription service that's really cheap, it's under $10 or something. Or you have a long cycle lead gen experience where maybe you're buying a service that is for your business and you actually have to get buy-in from your executive team and your higher ups to actually purchase the thing. So that might take a lot longer than 30 days. So we'll walk over some of the best models for each of these scenarios. Personally, for e-commerce, I like the position-based model that Cassie was talking about earlier. It really is my Tyrion. It emphasizes the channel of acquisition and the channel of conversion while sprinkling in some credit for those that are on the fence, kind of flighty comparison shopping clicks in the middle of the funnel. And just for reference too, you can set up all of these models in the model comparison tool that we mentioned earlier. So as you're building these, just bear that in mind. And we'll actually make all of these models available for you to one-click install into your account after the webinar. But also the time decay models, I really love those for lead gen. They build up and they build up credit with each subsequent visit leading up to the conversion. And as folks get more and more serious about your product, the channel that brought them to your site again and again becomes more critical. So we'll kind of step through the individual models. The first one is for inexpensive e-commerce. These are really quick impulse buys where there's a lot of comparison shopping. So people are hopping between sites to look for a great price, or they're looking for the best selection. So there's less likely that there's going to be more than 2 channels involved here. So last click is a little more important than it'd usually be. So I'd like to assign about 45% of the weight to the last click in this model and 35-20 to the first click and middle clicks respectively. The more pages of selection you have on your site, usually the deeper your customers will get and the more likely you are to keep them from straying to other sites when they're doing comparison shopping. So the longest folks are really going to wait to make this kind of impulse purchase is maybe 1 pay period. So I think 15 days would be a sufficient look back window here too. So that'd be a really great starting point for inexpensive e-commerce. For more expensive stuff, this purchase is really anything but an impulse buy. So you're really likely to have more than 1 channel involved in this, this final decision. And Google Analytics default of 30 days, like I mentioned earlier, might not be adequate here. This type of product might be one that people have to save up a few pay periods to buy that item, and so they would likely check out 30 days after their first visit. And the introduction channels and the time they spend getting acquainted with your site and product and the depth of knowledge they start to get on your product over time becomes really critical. So I like to configure the engagement weighting on time on site rather than page depth. That brings us to short cycle lead gen. So think of this as maybe like an inexpensive subscription service, like maybe a Spotify or a Netflix kind of thing where you're getting someone into that funnel, and it's maybe a freemium kind of model with a short trial, like 7-day or 14-day trial. I like the ramp model. I think page depth becomes really a bit more critical here, as it shouldn't take really long to win over the potential customer, but they should be able to get through and scan your site really quickly and get several pages of information and informational content to get a quick read on why they should trust you with their credit card number as a holding thing. So, I think really the half-life that you set with your time decay model becomes pretty critical. What I mean by half-life there is once you get 15 days back from the conversion, or as you get 15 days down the road, the clicks that occurred 15 days prior start to get half the credit as the one that happened on the day of the purchase. So it kind of naturally sort of decays the credit that gives to earlier clicks in the funnel. That's great for short cycle lead gen, but what about the really long cycle stuff where it's a B2B service that maybe requires, again, like a larger leadership and monetary buy-in? You're going to want to set a much longer look back window for that. And I'm finding actually for some of my tech B2B clients that the 90-day maximum in Google Analytics might not actually be enough here, but 90 days will give you a much broader picture. So I definitely would advise that you crank up that look back window. And again here, time on site becomes a bit more critical because you're allowing folks to kind of get really acquainted with your product and really read a lot more about it. They'd be doing things like reading case studies and white papers. So that lends itself to using time on site as an additional weighting factor. But when you play the game of attribution modeling here, it may seem like an all or nothing prospect, but that's just not the case. All of these models that I recommended as a starting point are just a jumping off place. Not really one model has to sit the Iron Throne, but I would pick one and kind of go with it for a while. Like at least stick with a model for as long as your look back window, and compare it to other models that emphasize other parts of the traditional marketing funnel, like some of the canned models. And getting the jumping off point from your traditional last click model, I think is just a great way to do it and compare.
Yeah, just moving on anything besides a last click is a great start. So that's definitely, and as you've gone through the custom stuff too, and it's a little bit tricky when you get to those. So make sure you really fully understand your purchasing cycle and what your end goal is too. I think is crucial.
Absolutely. So, I mean, the next obvious question is, how do you know if your new model that you chose is working? And again, here, it's where I would compare the model to last click. And really, when you compare to last click, the only channel that should be losing out in credit should be direct. If you see a lot of your other important marketing channels losing a ton of credit under a given model, it's probably not the model for your business. So you want to play around with the different models. The channels that you invest in greatly should either show little change under your new model compared to last click, or they should show a positive change. And really, it's all about redistributing what we've known to be overinflation of direct as a revenue and conversion source, and getting that out to the other channels that truly influence that direct conversion. So a good attribution model should expose just how much overinflation is happening with direct.
All right, so we have another poll question here, just kind of break it up. And I know Michael and I have kind of covered a lot of information so far about the different models, the attribution model. So we just wanted to kind of see where your guys' heads were at. And so far from the attribution models that we've covered, just kind of get your feedback and see which attribution models would you be most interested in using for your accounts. Last click, hope not. First click, time decay. position base, or maybe trying out some of the custom models that that Michael's just covered. So if you guys just take a minute and fill out that poll. Said I've personally tested out some of the time decay and position-based ones, just looking at those models. I haven't experimented too much with the custom models, but I'm excited to, especially after learning all this stuff from Michael too. I'm excited to try out some custom ones.
Holy moly! It looks like 56% of our respondents are really interested in applying the custom models. So I'm glad we got those sort of configuration points across. The next most popular is position-based here, which I really think is a great starting point. I don't think you guys should really undervalue the CAN models. They all have their uses, and even if they're just a point of comparison to your custom model. So that I'd just bear that in mind too.
Yeah, great point. And speaking of comparing the models, we've talked a lot about Google Analytics and where to look at the model comparison information and just attribution information in general. We've really kind of focused on analytics, but you can actually access all of this information directly in your AdWords accounts now. So just directly in the AdWords UI, if you're using the one key is that you must be using AdWords conversion tracking, and then under your tools and then conversions, and if you go to the search funnels tab there under attribution model, you can see right here where the different attribution modeling is available, and you can compare the different models directly in your AdWords account. And just let me click here. So, so analyzing the attribution performance, you can, in AdWords, you can actually look at it all the way down to the keyword level, which is cool. So the benefit of this is by looking at it, you can see, you can look at, so for example, let's say here campaign 1. Let's say this is a non-brand campaign and by looking at just last click, if you were looking at it, it'd say it had 0 conversions, when in fact it actually assisted in $132 in revenue. Let's say it spent $75 in the last 30 days, and that keyword, looking at a last click performance, you would normally pause that keyword off. It looks like it has no conversions, so you may pause that off. Whereas, and let's say looking at campaign number 2 here, let's say this campaign here is a remarketing campaign, and it's driving, if you look at it, you know, from a last click model, conversion value there is $206. But if you look at it using, let's say, a position-based model, it actually has driven, or is using the position-based model, you've actually have $901 in conversion value. That's an increased value of 337% for this particular campaign. So if you were making optimizations, let's say you were going to, this campaign's return on ad spend was 20% below your target goal, by looking at last click, you may be bidding down this campaign, thinking it's not really converting, when in fact, looking at where else it's assisting in the funnel and looking at the different attribution models, it's really helping drive more revenue than you thought. And let's say even looking at campaign, let's say number 3 here, this particular one, let's say this one's a display campaign, and looking at just your last click ROI, it's about 25% below the goal. And so again, you would be like, oh, I'm going to pull back on this campaign here, when in fact it's actually driving 41% more revenue than is being reported, just off of the last click. So this is, like I said, a tool that's right in AdWords. If you're using AdWords, you can go here using the conversion tracking, take a look, like I mentioned campaigns, but you can drill down from the campaign to the ad group to the actual keywords that are in the funnel. And then there's a, like I said, there's a little arrows here you can filter to see, look at conversion value or just the number of % change in conversions. And you could actually take a look and see which are some of these, what are some of these terms or campaigns that weren't that aren't getting that, say maybe you're going to make a drastic decision that you're going to, pause off a display campaign because it's at the looking at last click reporting, it's only it doesn't look like it's performing well. I would, say get in your AdWords account, look at the attribution model, take a look at, see how it's comparing between the two before you make any sort of those decisions. And then, it's just good to, also if you're looking to, get more budget maybe for a display campaign or marketing, you actually now can, have a little bit more proof to show how much additional revenue is being produced from some of these campaigns that maybe just supporting more of the funnel for some of the branded traffic or some of those other higher converting last click terms. So basically, I mean, you guys are all probably, know a lot about PPC and you know that these campaigns are helping. Now you have the actual proof and you can pull this up directly in AdWords and use it to help make those optimizations in your account. Okay.
Absolutely. So you can also get at all of this from within Google Analytics too, if you want a little more flavor and a few more dimensions to go off of. Based on what's in Analytics, you can get at this by, again, going into the model comparison tool and just simply clicking the toggle at the very top of the nav ribbon over to AdWords instead of all. You can find, the same information that Cassie mentioned alongside a lot of other dimensions and metrics in GA. And when you drill down, you have, again, the option to go by either AdWords campaign, ad group, or keyword. I like to add ad distribution network as a secondary dimension in there, so you can actually see your campaigns that are search, your campaigns that have search partner activity, and your campaigns that have content or display network activity as well. And you can see here I'm comparing last click interaction model to position-based here, just the stock position-based model with no customizations. And I'm seeing that for my first campaign, the search campaign, I'm actually leaving upwards of 60-some, almost $70,000 worth of credit on the table. And I may have been backing off and scaling back on this campaign when there's really that much more ROI happening that's probably being hidden in direct revenue and conversions. As you move on down the funnel, you'll see a lot of different behavior between head campaigns and tail campaigns. So what's driving that top of funnel interaction and what's driving that middle funnel interaction. And you'll see that delineation really clearly if you have your AdWords campaigns really organized well by intent like that. So I'd really, again, compare the models. You can actually, I think, layer 3 models against each other in the comparison tool at a time. So as you create your custom models, try a non-last interaction stock model and then last interaction as well, and kind of feel out where there's value in your campaigns depending on the traditional marketing funnel.
Yeah, and same thing in the AdWords too. I think you can compare up to 3 models as well.
Yeah. And then the next piece, once you've chosen and you think you've got a model that's right for your business, is measuring the campaign changes over time. So let's say I decide to invest 25% more in this campaign, and I'm judging it just on the last click perspective. If I spend 25% more, am I going to get 25% more in return in the next month? And so what I've measured here in last interaction is you'll see that the jump in conversion value is only 22%. So I invested 25% more in this campaign and only got 22% more revenue. It's not an incredible problem. I like having more revenue, but maybe it didn't warrant such a strong investment. But when I look at it under my position-based model, even the stock one, I'm seeing that this campaign really generated about 30% more value over time too. So that's why it's important to pick a few models or one model or a few models and measure their effectiveness over time for your business as you're making changes. You can do the same thing with keyword bid changes too. So if you're curious if I invest, 15% higher bid and try to move up my ad positioning on this given keyword, whether that's going to pay off under the last click model versus position based versus my custom model, this is a great way to do that and measure it over time. So again, if you do this right, a model shouldn't just show your increases over last click, but it should actually make you more money when you invest properly. And then you'll be rolling in kind of like golden insects like Jaro from Game of Thrones. So you'll have this awesome embroidery and you'll be able to buy all these fancy costumes. Not really, but
That'd be awesome. I wish it did.
yeah.
All right, so we're at our last poll question here. We're going to jump into some live Q&A here in just a minute, but we just wanted to throw that out there. If you would like help with your PPC accounts, if you're interested in a free account assessment from Hanapin for accountants spending more than $20,000 a month, or a free opportunity for a gap analysis from Portent, or if you're not interested, or maybe you're interested in both. So if you just take a minute and fill that out, that would be great. And then, like I said, we're going for the last couple of minutes. Looks like we still have about 15 or so minutes left here. So I think we have some questions that have started to come through the question panel there. So Michael and I will try do our best to answer any of the questions that you have. Michael, if you want to lead off there.
Yeah, sure. So the first question we got is where do you set the weight of each interaction for the custom model? And what you'll find there is if you go to the model comparison tool, it pretty much all of the things that we mentioned today live there in that report in analytics. And there's a drop down where you select from the CAN models, and at the bottom of that drop down, there is a custom model and a link off to that solutions gallery that I was talking about where you can get Avinash's model. So both of those things are accessible from there. Some of the next questions we got, is what if you have two different conversion types? First, lead gen, and then the second is actually ordering in the shop. So any thoughts on this one, Cassie?
I think when you're looking at like that, you might have to split them out and look at them separately to see how they're interacting. I haven't messed around with it too much with using the two different conversion types, but I'm thinking you might need to look at them more separately.
Yeah, so I mean that's where defining I think the ability to compare with multiple models in the model comparison tool comes in really handy there. So you would have one custom model that would address the lead gen side of your business, and then a second one that would address like the actual e-com and checkout piece.
Yeah, you could use like the time decay one, looking at more for some of the lead gen ones, and the e-commerce one, comparing it more to like the position base might be helpful in that case.
So we had another question on short cycle lead gen that as I was kind of reading this and as this came in was a really great point. And listener asked, how can it be page depth for engagement when the landing page is a single page? So if you're using a squeeze page for your short cycle lead gen, how can people get farther into your site? And that's kind of true if you're sending just paid traffic, but we all know that people reach our site in a lot of different ways. So they come, through organic search and referrals where they're not always falling into our very structured paid landing page kind of sandbox. So, just kind of bear that in mind is that, that again might be another good scenario to choose multiple models, right? And to create one that doesn't have any page depth weighting for your paid campaigns and that does for your other channels.
Yeah, you might want to, I mean, one thing you could do too is maybe look at more of the time on site in that case, if it's just one page that you have, because they might not, they might just spend more time combing through your page that you do have. But that's a good point is people do, you could never advertise your other site, but they'll find a way to get to it anyways and dig through it. But that could be another option that you could do if it's just a one-page site.
Our sixth question here, which I think we addressed a little bit after it was asked, but it was, how do you apply the new model insights to your paid search campaigns? Is it strictly, making budget level adjustments to campaigns, or can you do keywords?
So, I mean, in AdWords, I know you can look, like I said, you can drill down all the way down to like the keyword level thing. You can see the performance as far as how, what they're spending, how they've been performing. I don't think you can pull in, you'd have to kind of go back and forth a little bit. I couldn't see an area where you can actually like download that information in AdWords um, to get like cost information. So there would have to be a little bit of kind of merging some spreadsheets and stuff together to get that information. It's just
Yeah.
directly from there, but you can pull it all the way down to the keyword level.
Yep. And another thing to note too is you can actually pull it down to the placement level as well for your display campaigns, all the way down to the page in Google Analytics. So that becomes pretty awesome for if you're doing a lot of display or even some retargeting too. So you can see if there's sites that a lot of your retargeting audiences are converting on earlier clicks that maybe you want to target directly with a traditional display campaign. So that could be a way you leverage it too. Also, I know in analytics you have the ability to drill down to not only the keyword level but also to the query too. So if you have a broad match keyword that's bringing in a lot of different queries, you can actually pinpoint these attribution models and leverage those down to the query level too.
That's good to know.
So there's a couple other questions here too. One person asked, I have a lot of unavailable in my top conversion paths report. And if we scroll kind of back to one of our earlier slides there,
Go back.
where we're at, I think it's slide 14, where we've got the top conversion paths. There are scenarios in there where you don't just see things like organic search or paid search or social. You see some strings in there that say unavailable, and they're kind of grayed out.
Oh, did I pass
And I think you're getting there, but it's very similar to these strings with paid search and all of that. So right there, yeah, you'll notice you'll find a lot of things like top conversion paths that have unavailable in them and they're grayed out. That basically just means that Google doesn't know how to assign credit to that channel. It might be something that you've manually tagged and that's coming into Google Analytics. And then also, the way to get around that though is that you can switch from just a channel view in the top conversion paths. There's a little ribbon right above the report where you can switch to a source medium view or a campaign view. And so if you've done a lot of manual tagging that Google isn't detecting, you can actually see that in other ways and segment by other dimensions there.
Yeah, that just probably could mean too that they're that the tracking might not be set up correctly too. So just
Correct.
sure that it's on there. That's also key too, is really just making sure that your analytics tracking is set up correctly in all the pages. All right. So we got, I think, just a couple. We got maybe time for one more question, and then I think we're going to have to wrap it up for today. I don't know if we had any more questions.
So there was one more
Sorry.
that I think is really critical, and that's, can these attribution models take into account offline conversions? That's a fantastic question. So that's something that's actually now capable of in Google Analytics through Universal Analytics. And if you have the user ID functionality available, what it essentially does is it creates a one-to-one anonymous ID that lives in your Google Analytics account, but can also be passed into things like your CRM system and other non-analytics platform sources. And so as a customer that comes in as a lead progresses to become a paying customer in an offline way, like maybe they make a phone call to a salesperson and you convert them on the phone, what happens is as you change that person's status in your CRM system, you can import that on their anonymous user ID back into Google Analytics to tie it together with their web activity. So universal analytics is really powerful in that way, and we can send actually some stuff after the webinar that talks about converting your site over to using universal analytics. There are a lot of specific use cases around that, but it is possible to track offline conversions in the models.
Awesome. Well, I think that was all we had time for today. So I just want to thank everyone for joining us. And like we said, we'll be sending out some follow-up material regarding the attribution and the different custom models. But just want to thanks everybody and for tolerating our Games of Thrones references throughout the presentation. Hopefully it made sense, kind of broke it down a little bit, and hopefully you'll start looking at it in your accounts and making your optimization decisions off of that. So just wanted to thank you, Michael, for doing the webinar with me today. This was fun.
My pleasure.
Yeah, if you guys have any questions, feel free to, reach out to us here for Hanapin at, marketing at hanapinmarketing.com or Michael at Portent.com. And, feel free to mention anything with the hashtag ThinkPPC. So hope you all have a great Thursday, and so long.
Cheers, guys.
Thanks. Bye.